The current clinical view of ADHD is that it's a developmental delay in two dimensions of neuropsychological, brain functioning development. Now, that statement is rich with meaning because developmental delays are not psychopathologies. But with ADHD, like other developmental disorders, the disorder is defined by the degree of delay in the trait. It's a quantitative difference, not a qualitative difference. And so for language disorders, learning disabilities, and ADHD, we have to do age comparisons to see what is the magnitude of the deficit. And it's that magnitude, that quantity, that defines the disorder. And so right at the beginning with ADHD, we know we're dealing with a neurodevelopmental disorder that originates in neurology and genetics of the individual, not in the social environment. Now, there are two traits that are not developing on schedule in the person with ADHD. The first, of course, although it's called inattention, is really a metacognitive dimension, an executive dimension that is filled with symptoms of working memory deficits, failure of language to guide behavior, activation, motivation problems of the individual, and so on. So if we look at the attention problems or the executive deficits here, we see the things I mentioned this morning. The first, poor persistence over time toward goals. Clinicians call that sustained attention, but William James called it persistence because it's on the motor side of the brain, not the sensory side of the brain. The word attention implies some kind of processing, filtering, perception, selection, and ADHD doesn't involve those things. Instead, ADHD is a failure to string behavior together over time to get to a goal. That has to do with frontal lobe output motor functions. So persistence is a far more accurate term for this than sustained attention because it clearly conveys the problem on the behavioral side of the brain. You can't string together sufficient complex chains of action the way other people are able to do to get toward that future event, or the task here, if you will. Now, linked to the failure of persistence is a problem with resistance to distraction. This also is a motor problem, not a sensory problem. The person with ADHD reacts to distracting events more than others do. He doesn't perceive them any better than other people do. But what other people do is suppress responses to goal-irrelevant events. They're not part of what you were doing. You simply don't respond to them. So there's an inhibitory part of the distraction here that needs to be appreciated. It's the failure to inhibit responding